disabilities, they still need to percolate from policy to practice. We saw what our parents, siblings, and teachers experience even in a large city like Mumbai. In fact, in many parts of India, intellectual disability is still considered to be a curse, a result of divine justice or punishment for sins committed in past lives. And persons with disability continue to be neglected and marginalized. Lack of data, including on prevalence and intervention effectiveness, further impedes affirmative action. So, what does equity look like for an individual with intellectual disability? Sure, having an IQ below 70 coupled with other disabilities makes progress slow, but not impossible. Inclusive development holds the key. The term inclusive here refers to a right-based expansion of India's development paradigm, one that will create opportunities and conditions for each individual to live with dignity, to achieve his or her potential, and to thrive, irrespective of any perceived disadvantages at birth. Having access to good quality services in health and education makes change possible. I see the change Jai Vakil brings in the lives of our students. So Jai Vakil Foundation was started in 1944, that's 77 years ago, and it's longer than India's independence, by a family, Mr. and Mrs. Vakil, who had a daughter, Deena, with Downs. At that time, there was nowhere to send her for education or therapy, and so they started in their house with one child. A journey which started with a single child and went on to encompass lakhs of others, and today is the largest and oldest not-for-profit in this space. Today we serve 19,000 students annually and 700 students across our 3 campuses in Maharashtra. The aim of every intervention we provide is inclusion, and we define this at the family, community, and society level. When I think about what's possible, I think about Huzaifa.
तो उन लोग ने देखा ये बच्चा कर सकता है, आगे बढ़ सकता है, ये आगे चल के स्केटिंग कर सकता है, आगे इंडिया से कुछ तो करके लेके आएगा।
मुझे स्कूल में जाने के पहले तो मतलब अच्छे से बात नहीं करते था, मतलब सेंटेंस पूरे नहीं बोलता था, आधा सेंटेंस बताता था और आधा इशारे में बताता था।
तो इसकी उम्र रहने की समझो 10 साल, तो खेलने का 5, 6, 7 साल के बच्चे के वैसे हिसाब से खेलता था, तो खेलते वक्त भी उसको समझ में नहीं आता था।
साइकिल भी चलाने का तो जैसे बच्चे छोटे साइकिल चलाते ना वैसा वो नहीं चलाता था, साइकिल
पकड़ के रखता था।
हुज़ैफा हमारे स्कूल में 2009 में आया। जब भी आया तभी हाइपर एक्टिव था, बहुत कुछ बिहेवियर प्रॉब्लम्स थे। फिजिकल एक्सरसाइज एंड स्पोर्ट्स देंगे तो थोड़ा हाइपर एक्टिविटी थोड़ी कम होती थी।
मेरे को बहुत अच्छा लगा, वहाँ पर बच्चे अच्छे लगे, स्पोर्ट्स बहुत अच्छा लगा, डांसिंग बहुत अच्छा लगा। वो स्कूल भी बहुत अच्छी है, सिखाते हैं बहुत अच्छा है।
फिर मैडम ने बताया आपको उसको स्केटिंग करने, फिर पूरा जितना भी जब तक आज तक के मतलब पूरा मैडम ने स्कूल में उनको ट्रेन किया।
और मेरा वो ड्रीम था तभी से कि बहुत सारे बच्चे वो स्पेशल ओलंपिक में इंटरनेशनल तक जाते हैं।
तो अभी जो भी है अच्छे से खेलो, पर भी दिमाग से खेलो। स्केटिंग जो है अपन चलाते हैं पर भी गिरना नहीं, उठ के अभी सीखना कोशिश करना।
आज हमारे पूरे खानदान में वो अकेला ऐसा है जो प्लेन में बैठा इतने दूर जाके पूरा देश का नाम, खानदान का नाम, सबका नाम उसने निकाला है।
think about what's possible, I think of Akshay.
We've had Akshay with us. Akshay's been here for I think around 4 to 5 years, and he's made a lot of progress. He's really come on well and continues to improve and grow every day. And is a confident, happy boy.
Quiet fellow, sweet fellow, always keeps laughing. He never says, I will not do it, I don't know to do it. He tries, and he will do, and he is doing. Right. Now he is in packing, making the package, doing the deliveries, bringing the checks.
You've got to be very clear in your communication. Give them one task at a time. So how you sort of nurture them, and you get down to a scale which, you build them up one block at a time.
हमें तो बहुत अच्छा लगता है वो काम आता है लेकिन म्हणजे मला वाटत पण नव्हता तो काम करेल किंवा पैसे आणेल किंवा एवढं म्हणजे भरपूर मी आनंद आहे त्याच्याविषयी म्हणजे त्याचं टेन्शन नाही आता आम्हाला.
Yeah, it's not only helped him, it's helped us. It started off with helping him, but in a way we've helped ourselves also.
When I think about what's possible, I think of Meehan, who completed his studies at Bombay International School in the 10th grade and is now interning as an assistant teacher in the same school. He dreams of being a chef and opening his own restaurant one day.
Hey guys, I'm Meehan and I'm 17 years old. I have Down syndrome and I want to tell you I don't feel any different from any other kid. Except that my parents say I'm extra cute. Most parents who realize their kid has Down syndrome start panicking. Since they think, oh man, what does this mean? Will this affect their health? Will it affect how they think? Let me tell you this, it's nothing to feel afraid of. My parents were nervous too, but as I grew older, I could do a lot more things than they could imagine. I'm telling all the parents out there that your kid with Down syndrome will surprise you one day. You see, whether it's gymnastics or composting or anything else. To summarize, if your kid has Down syndrome, try not to worry too much as you'll be shocked how much they can do on their own in the long run. You just need more time and effort to make them learn. I can guarantee that it will pay off and you might even call them a guru like my parents call me.
Powerful words, Meehan's. While this has been possible for a few, we have 26 million dreams to champion. We believe a world that includes everyone is stronger for all. We all deserve to maintain our uniqueness while being treated equally. Education is the key and can be fully realized only when children with disabilities are also included in the narrative. Change begins with each one of us. When our perceptions and our attitudes change, our actions follow. Every step towards a more diverse and inclusive world is a step towards a better world. Imagine the ripple effect if each one of us did our part. The result would be tremendous. Let's watch the second half of What Do You See?
I see her smile, which brightens up our day.
ये बच्चे हिम्मत नहीं हारते हैं.
मैं देखती हूँ कि ईश्वरी को आजू बाजू के लोगों में रहना बहुत अच्छा लगता है.
I see my sister with someone who has an unconditional love.
मैं देखती हूँ कि मुझे मेरे तीनों बच्चों में कोई फर्क नहीं है. तीनों बच्चे मेरे एक समान हैं.
जब मैं मेरी बेटी की आंखों में देखती हूँ तो उसके आंखों में बहुत सारे एक्सप्रेशंस है, फीलिंग्स है.
हर एक बच्चे में अलग अलग एबिलिटी होती है.
अगर समाज के प्रवाह में उनको रहना है, उनके आगे बढ़ाना है, तो हमको उनको अपना ही दर्जा देना पड़ेगा. ये मैं देखता हूँ.
Together, let's shape a world that chooses love over hate and stands for a tomorrow that is all inclusive, where not just a few of us, but all Indians are thriving with dignity and equity.
Space, the focus on inclusion at different levels like family, community. What inspires me is the perseverance, hard work of the students. With that, we'll take a short break before we start the next session.
We at IIT are committed to working actively with students as co-creators of impact, not passive receivers of change.
We pledge to rebuild a system that levels the playing field for our students, ensuring that their lives are defined by their choices and not by the circumstances.
Is ready for school. He expresses without fear.
Is learning through play.
Feels safe.
By providing quality training that is accessible, relevant, contextual and fun.
By supporting them through effective coaching.
By creating communities for peer learning.
Parents to create a safe, joyful and enriching home environment.
To take an active role in their child's development.
We will advocate for investment in early childhood education.
again like next 5 seconds.
Ashwat, hi, congratulations for you.
Welcome back to the session. Right now we have a panel discussion on foundational skills to address learning loss. We have 3 amazing panelists here. I'm very, very happy to welcome all 3 of them here. We have Saurabh Dhaneja, who is the CEO of Akansha Foundation, a non-profit organization with a mission to impact the lives of low-income children, enabling them to maximize their potential and transform their lives. We also have Liana Hyde, who is the Director of English for Education Systems for South Asia. She leads and supports 6 country teams with technical input on projects focused on teacher development and language education. We have Shubhra Mittal, who is currently heading Khan Academy India's school teams, which works with various state governments to promote and deepen usage of Khan Academy content in government schools. Welcome all 3 of you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Good evening, audience. Today's theme is exciting. We are talking about going beyond the foundational skills. And we at the Akansha Foundation currently run 27 schools in partnership with Mumbai, Pune, and lately Nagpur Municipal Corporation. And as we have been welcoming the students back into the classrooms, we understand the importance of not just the short-term foundational skills, as well as the essential skills for long-term success of children. Before we get on, I would love to invite both my panelists to give a little bit more details about themselves, who they are and the work that they do before we kick off today's panel conversation. Liana, I would love to just bring you in to, give a little bit more about, share a little bit more about yourself.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Firstly, thank you for inviting me. It's a real honor to be at this event on such an important topic as well. So as you said, my name is Liana Hyde. I work for the British Council. I'm speaking to you today from Mumbai, where I'm based. I moved to India around 9 years ago, and I lead on our work in English and education systems across South Asia. So basically, through this work, we support education systems to improve the quality of English language teaching, assessment, and learning. We work with teachers and government systems across this whole region. Here in India, we have a huge legacy of work in teacher development, working directly with numerous state governments and providing continuing professional development opportunities for teachers. We do that in lots of different ways, so with face-to-face and increasingly with online and blended approaches. We also have an increasing focus on development of teacher communities, so it's very much in line with the work of FERCI and other participants in this event. And yeah, we also do quite a lot of research around language and language learning in education systems. And so we conducted research into multilingualism in India, looking at the impact of different languages in the classroom. The British Council advocates for the use of home languages in early years of schooling and for the use of multilingual approaches in the classroom, as evidence shows that these are effective approaches to development of foundational skills. So we have lots and lots of resources for teachers, for English teachers, but also with crossover into other subjects. I think we're going to post a link to our resource page as well, so you can check out some of the resources and join our communities as well.
That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Liana. Shubhra, over to you.
Hi, thanks everyone. Delighted to be here, and thank you to Surya for inviting us here. I'm Shubhra. Like Elizabeth mentioned, I'm currently leading Khan Academy India's schools team, where we're working with multiple state governments in India to introduce Khan Academy. As many of you may know, Khan Academy is a free online learning platform which students can access anywhere in any part of the world. While we have content for several different subjects, are really, I think the subjects that we really specialize in and are known for is maths and science. In India, we have content in maths for grades 1 to 10. In science, we currently have content for grade 10, really developing content for higher grades, in the next year or so. A little bit about just a journey. We started, as a global organization back in 2012 by our founder, Sal Khan. We started kind of preparing these videos to tutor his cousins. They became a rage, and now what we have is Khan Academy, an online platform. India, we've been here since, before 2017, officially kind of set up in 2017. This year, we have about 1.2 million learners in India who've accessed. We have content available in 6 Indian languages. And really looking to kind of expand our footprint in India in the coming years. So looking forward to talking more about what we're doing in the course of this panel.
Thank you so much, Shubhra. And Akanksha Foundation, like I shared a little while back, is a 30-year-old nonprofit founded by Shaheen Mistry herself, who's currently the Chief Executive Officer of Teach for India. And our vision, Liana and Shubhra at Akanksha, is to equip all children with key knowledge, skills, and values that will lead them to live an empowered life. And at Akanksha, we have this, really lofty vision framework for 2030, 2035, where we really are unpacking empowerment as a sense of mastery, a sense of agency, and a sense of purpose to be able to give back to the community. And as we build on that, one of the key things that as we are reflecting on as the schools begin to reopen is how are we going to be able to strike a balance between addressing, the learning loss on literacy, numeracy, which is fairly foundational. And at the same time, the other important foundational elements as well of socio-emotional development and the 4 C's that all of us are aware of. I think the research is constantly telling us that, all of these things combined is what will, lead to success in a decade from now. So would love to, Shubhra, probably bring you in to start with, if you can touch upon how in your work with Khan Academy, are you all thinking about addressing both the foundational numeracy, which Khan Academy is really known for, as well as higher order thinking skills, which are equally critical for success?
Great. No, thanks, Saurabh. And maybe what I'll do is I'll try to address this in multiple parts. One is I'll just maybe talk and spend a minute or so just to talk about Khan Academy and just our philosophy and an approach as we kind of put together this online platform. We know there are lots of learning platforms and softwares that are out there, but what is it that makes Khan Academy what it is and sets us apart? And I think really, we all know these learning apps exist. They exist at every grade, and we know that they just kind of worsen as a child moves from one grade to another. And we also know that the disrupted education that children have seen in the last 2 years would are likely to have worsened these, right? Now I think as Sal Khan was kind of putting this organization together, I think that really at the core of it was the fact and the awareness and the understanding that foundational skills and concepts that a child needs to know, they're really important at every grade. And it's important that a child knows all of those things in the grades that they are in as they move on to the next grade, because curriculum just builds on what they've learned previously. So if you haven't understood a concept in algebra, as you move higher to a higher grade, you're going to start seeing that play in terms of what you're able to gain from the more advanced concepts that you're talking about, right? And we see this as a challenge. And so really, the way our content is structured, the way the kind of thought process that's gone into it, it's really being able to help children understand, build really solid foundational understanding on a lot of these concepts. That's through practice questions that they have, that's through being able to test a particular concept in multiple ways. So it's not just 2 + 2 = 4, but you can almost kind of have the same question be tested in multiple ways to see whether a child understands addition, and you can translate that into other concepts, right? And then how do you ensure that as you're doing that, you're building the confidence of a child, right? Maths is anyway a really sort of a subject that we're all afraid of, we're all scared of. As it gets more difficult, we start running away. And so how do we do that without letting the child feel intimidated, letting sort of losing the child in that process of the journey? And really the platform has a lot of these pieces built in, whether that's through hints that a child can access and multiple sort of types of hints that are available to the child, whether it's gamification or other features of the platform. And really, I think the big picture and the big message here from the content and the way the content and the platform in terms of coming together is being able to build that confidence in a child, being able to kind of move to more of a growth mindset, moving to things that are intelligence and what we know is not fixed, but as we practice, as we learn more, we can kind of learn more and more things. And so that's kind of on the platform side. And I think that sort of that philosophy just translates into all of the work that we're doing. And so kind of taking now and seeing what does that translate into the work that we're doing with state governments, with our partners, with government schools and children. Right. And the few ways that we believe that we need to do this. One is ensuring that this content that I'm talking about, which is vetted and highly trusted, is actually available to children in the language that they best understand and that can learn in most. And so as we go into state partnerships, one of the first things we do with them is ensuring that this content is localized in the language. So we're right now talking about Punjabi, Marathi, English, and a few other languages where we work with the state and the resources to almost recreate these resources in the language that makes it easier for the child to learn these concepts and the mastery of that. And I think that is an important and integral part of how we're thinking about building a lot of these foundational skills and building that. The other thing that we started doing and that as we're working with our states, and we know that we're having children come back with possibly huge gaps from previous academic years. What we have is a very thoughtfully curated, what we call the Foundations Course of a Readiness Program, which is essentially saying, what are some of those critical concepts from previous grade a child needs to know as they enter into the new grade, because those are almost going to be fundamental for the child to learn. And we're really working with many of our partners right now to see how best we can integrate a lot of these courses into the way the academic year and the calendar is planned. So I'll pause here to see if you have any kind of questions. More than happy to talk about any of this further.
Thanks a lot, Shubhra. I think very pertinent points about, what we and Akshay are also calling as power objectives, which are very critical for all kids to master in every grade. And I think this is the place where I'll bring in Liana as well, because you touched a lot about, the various languages in which the math content has now been made available, which is so critical to develop the critical thinking that is also crucial for long-term success. Liana, no one better to speak about, the language acquisition. So would love to bring you in, and perhaps if you can share a little bit more about British Council's approach in, looking at how do you look at the 4 C's, especially as you look at, teaching English as a second language, as well as multilingualism, Liana, which now the NEP 2020 has also spoken fairly, clearly about.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's when you're thinking about the kind of the 4 C's, so communication, creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, the teaching of language, it sort of fits very well into the development of those skills. So, I mean, if you think about what is language, it is about communication, right? And so it's just ingrained into everything that we do in terms of our work with teachers, to encourage them to give more opportunities for communication and use of language. And really, that's what you're trying to do in any kind of language classroom, any language, is to encourage the students to communicate, be that in written or spoken form. So I think that it's just so core to everything that we do around teacher development and encouraging, their encouraging them in how to develop their students' skills in these areas. I think there's a lot that we do around also the use of more learner-centered techniques. So for language learning, again, it's really important to use things like pair work and group work to increase the opportunities for communication. And that, again, it helps to develop those kind of collaborative skills. I think when we look at teacher development, a lot of what we do is raising awareness of these other aspects of teaching. So it's sort of helping teachers to think about, why you're doing certain tasks. Is maybe your ultimate aim is to teach a specific piece of vocabulary or a grammar point or something like that. But actually, there's all these other skills that you're teaching, and you have a kind of responsibility to develop within your students as part of that. So it's really helping teachers to think about those other skills that they're developing alongside that kind of more content knowledge.
Thank you, Liana. And I know you spoke a little bit about, the teacher development philosophy of British Council. I would love to bring both of you in now with my next question, which is focused a lot around, how do we begin to support the teachers to be able to address both the immediate short-term needs of, ensuring that the foundational learning gaps are covered, and at the same time, set them up for success for balancing it with other essential skills that are needed for the long term as well. I'll share a little bit of a context from Akshay classroom as well. Yesterday, I was on tour of Akshay classrooms, and this is the period where we are, conducting our end of year assessment just to really determine if our kids have made progress over the last 3 months or so ever since the schools have reopened. And I was speaking to a couple of my language teachers, and they mentioned that in their classroom, there are about 8 levels of students on writing. There's one particular student who's sort of writing 2 pages, 5 paragraphs on healthy lifestyle as an essay. And then the same grade student, they have someone who's unable to construct one coherent paragraph, right? So, some of these struggles are going to be fairly real. And I would love to bring both of you in that in your work with the government systems right now, are you advising the government or partnering with the government on how to really prepare the teachers to address both the short-term needs as well as the long-term preparedness? Shubhra, Liana, any one of you can come in and perhaps if you can share a little bit of specific examples as well, if you have any.
Do you want to go first?
Sure, I can try and maybe we can all pitch in. I think sort of this is, like you said, it's going to be just so critical and important to do that, and teachers will have to play such an important role. And our understanding and the conversations that we're having with a lot of our government partners is right. Everybody's kind of got their hearts and minds in the right place, and I'm just hoping that it all comes together. I think in the short term, some of the things that are going to be really important, right? And we're seeing some of these conversations happen in a couple of states, right? Which is, having things like a readiness program or a foundations program, right? And almost everybody seems, that seems to be the way we're starting our academic years. And that's very encouraging that that is recognized as the need of the hour. And that's kind of, I think true for many of our partners. I think a few other things that I think will become important or need to become important, particularly as we talk about some of the higher grades is, and we know in the past and traditionally, the emphasis for teachers is on syllabus completion, right? And our syllabus is massive and time is always limited. And I just hope that that the messaging to our teachers changes from, at least in the coming couple of academic years, where we think about more of an abridged version of a syllabus, right, where we're not focusing so much on syllabus, but ensuring that students are just, whatever they're learning, we're helping and guiding students to be able to do that. And like you said, Saurabh, I think the biggest challenge is going to be for a teacher in terms of just the variation in where children are, and for her to be able, for the teacher to have tools, resources to be able to kind of cater to that very differentiated level of students and instruction. And there again, I think a platform like Khan Academy can be so powerful for a teacher, right? Where through the data and the teacher dashboard that you have is, at a student level, at a lesson level, at a classroom level, the teacher can get very quickly an understanding of what is kind of happening at the classroom level, where are sort of gaps, what does she need to do, what are kind of pieces that students have understood, what she needs to remediate. And likewise, when you kind of go into a specific topic and then at the student level, right? And I think that's going to be so critical and important for teachers to have. And there, I think the way technology can aid and guide a teacher is going to be so important, right? And I know teachers, I think kudos to teachers and the entire system, where they pivoted so quickly to remote learning and online learning in the last 2 years. But that's, in my personal opinion, it's here to stay, right? We will see a continuation of physical teaching and digital sort of learning, and somewhere how to blend it all together to make it real for students and be able to leverage that. I think it will require, I wouldn't say just training, because it's got to be more than just training in terms of hand-holding teachers, capacity building, and different people coming together to be able to enable that. I see it happening in pockets. I hope we're able to see it happen in a more consolidated way from many of our teachers. So yeah. Liana, would love
I think I agree. I agree completely. I mean, I think assessment is really core in terms of how the education system can move on. I think we get tied a lot to assessment, and that feeds into curriculum, and that feeds into how teaching happens. And so there's a real need for more capacity building around assessment and support for state governments as well. And we've been working on with a couple of different state governments around competency-based assessment and how to kind of build capacity of people to, item writers, and how to actually do that. What we see, and we're doing a piece of research actually at the moment around this, what we kind of see in the classroom is that teachers get the theory of it, but the practical implication of it is really, really difficult, especially if you have, 100 kids in your class. So, like, how do you actually implement that and use the information that you're getting from it more effectively to deal with, as you're saying, these massive differences that we're seeing in the amount of learning that's taken place during the lockdowns. I think there's another really important thing is around kind of teacher communities as well, giving teachers that space to connect with each other and support each other. I think it's often a kind of bottom-up thing, so it's teachers kind of coming together themselves, but I think there's also a lot of space for government to kind of support that more, and to find ways for teachers to share, what they're doing, as opposed to all individually working on certain things. So yeah, I think there's maybe something more around that could be developed.
And
Thank you both. Yeah, great insight. Yeah.
If I may just add, in terms of, I think, specifics, I think we're right now just preparing for kind of our programs in many of our states, and a lot of the differentiation in instruction that I was talking about that Khan Academy offers, that's the one piece that we hope to really kind of share with teachers as we kind of talk to them about the program, and hopefully, we'll see more take up from teachers around that, given this is going to be such a need of the hour for all of them.
Yeah, I mean, my three takeaways, Shubhra, from what both of you shared, and something that is very affirming, even as how we've been thinking at Akanksha as well, is that one is just like very tangible skill pertaining to differentiation. Second is just connected to assessments, keeping the end in mind, and how do you really create formative assessments that will allow you to really see progress at the classroom level. Third, Shubhra, I really loved how you said that, how do we bring in tech now that you've spent 24 months, familiarizing ourselves. Of course, that's, the digital divide was also a fair degree of reality in our country as well. And Liana, what you mentioned about teacher community is just such a powerful reminder that I think there is no year better than the coming year to sort of reinvigorate that spirit, where, teachers are coming together in instructional groups to be able to share their struggles as well as very specific practices of what's working. And with that, both, we have very limited time, and I would love to see, in the audience, if they have any questions of us. And in the meantime, I have one last question of both of you, which is just more pertaining to what would you say is your biggest hope, from, or ask rather from our policymakers as you look ahead to the next 12 to 24 months, 1 or 2 academic years. Liana, maybe this time we can have you first come in and share your response, and Shubhra, then you can follow.
Rather predictably, I would like policymakers and the government to support teachers, listen to teachers, understand their ground realities, and find ways in which we can really, practically support the teachers on the ground to help them to develop student skills, and to connect teachers to, I think it's really that listening part and making sure that there is that conversation going on between the kind of policy and the reality on the ground. We see great policy, it's really good, but how it translates and how we make sure that happens, and without a kind of in a sort of supportive way of teachers and respect for the really tough job which teachers are doing right now. That's my hope.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to talk about my one ask, and I think I'm coming here as a parent, as a practitioner, as just somebody. I think my one real big ask to all policymakers, all governments in India is let's make sure in the next 12 to 24 months, schools are the first to open and the last to close. COVID-19 is here to stay, and we may see waves of infection rates going up. And what we've seen in the last 2 years is very disruptive education. Schools have been the first to shut down, really the last to open. And it's been one of the most unfortunate reality for millions of students around this country. And I really hope that we see policymakers really prioritizing the needs of our children in the next 2 years and keeping schools open so that their education is not disrupted and we're not putting unnecessary I think asks on our children. I think that's really what I would say, and hopefully they can listen to students and their voices, and they all want to be back in school, and they're all loving being back in school right now. It's wonderful to kind of see that energy in school when you go to school right now, which has been missing for the last 2 years. So that's really where I'd come in.
Very, very much echo both of your points, Shubhra and Liana. Just yesterday when I was there, one of the students just tugged at my shirt and said, like, can we start the school from 1st of June instead of 15th of June? So just being able to listen to the voices of our students and teachers in the coming year will perhaps allow all of us to, really move ahead collectively in addressing just the impact that COVID has left behind, especially for our schools and children from the most marginalized communities. Thanks a lot, both of you, for your time. I just want to take a look at if there are any questions from the audience, and then direct it to one of you. If you just give me a moment, I'm going to pull out my chat window. I don't see that there are any questions. So thank you so much, both Liana as well as Shubhra, for your time and insight. And thanks a lot, Firki and Teach for India team, for having us here. Elizabeth, Prerna, over to you.
Yes, yeah. Thank you so much, dear panelists, for that wonderful discussion. The chat was very active. Like, there were a lot of comments that the participants have shared. There are no specific questions as such. But then I think one question I am definitely taking away is how to support teachers in addressing their short-term and long-term needs, specifically considering the role of FIRKI, like working with teachers. That's definitely something that we need to think about, and about the readiness program. But thank you so much for sharing these sparks with all of us.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Dear audience, we have our next session coming up. It's about socio-emotional learning for children in conflict areas by Vikramjit Sinha. I'm very happy to welcome Vikram here to this session. He has worked in the social development sector for around 26 years. His work is enriched by his academic combination of social anthropology, clinical hypnotherapy, and training in arts-based therapy, watercolor-based therapy, along with his practice across all these 26 years of field work with diverse communities in difficult situations. Thank you so much, Vikram, for joining this session. Over to you. Vikram, you're on mute. Could you please unmute and share?
All right. Okay, hi. Good evening, everyone. My name is Vikramjit Sinha. I am an arts-based therapist. I have done my work in primarily trained in trauma therapy, in clinical hypnotherapy, in arts-based therapy, as was just announced. What I'm going to take you through is basically my journey in the conflict areas and looking at how trauma plays a very important role in terms of shaping people's lives and what can be done with it, and how, as a pedagogue, as an arts-based pedagogue, how do I sort of intervene in these spaces. So I'm going to sort of narrate my journey, and I hopefully will think that it'll be interesting for you to look at what is it like to work in a marginalized area? What is it like to work in liminal spaces, in spaces where transformation is possible because of the difficulties these spaces exist? Okay, so could I have the PPT being shared? The first slide, please.
Just give a second.
Okay. Yeah, so just to tell you that what I'm going to essentially do is going to travel, take you through my journey from Sri Lanka to Kashmir, to Manipur, and you know, to look at how I worked in these states, and which have this particular law called AFSPA. Now particularly the AFSPA has been removed in northeastern areas, but this Arms Prevention Act, which makes it into a very highly militarized zones, and these spaces you know, have a certain kind of a need. So here we start with the areas of conflict. This is Sri Lanka. I worked with masks, I worked with tactile material, because tactile material was like a bridge to move from, you know, the unsaid to the said. So we use this mask because it sort of contains emotions and feelings and thoughts, and you can actually non-verbally express yourself much more. So because when conflict becomes really high, you actually don't have much to say, but you sort of can only use these masks through movement and through therapy. So these are the work with the mask. I got a vision to work in conflict area in Kandy when I had gone there in 2012. Could you go to the next slide, please? This is image theater. This is oppressor rescuer this is the drama triangle, which is an image theater. We are looking at how we can look at the victim, rescuer, and oppressor. And this is in Kandy. And they're from all over South Asia. And we're looking at how we can transform the oppressor alchemically into courage, how we can look at the raw material of victim and turn it into wisdom, how we can move into the rescue and turn it into compassion. So this is how the triangle moves. This is one of the core sort of axioms through which we sort of conduct our arts-based pedagogical work in conflict areas. Okay, the next one, please. This is my entry point from Sri Lanka. I straight off went off to Srinagar, to Kashmir, and here I'm sort of working in government schools as an entry point into. So school became a very important part to how do I enter into this world of conflict? Where do I start? So school became a very interesting place. The government school, this is Hyderabad. I'm working with trauma and education. I'm getting them to use their body, and I'm looking at you know, educating them on the flight, fright, and freeze. How we can actually through sensation remove move up stress through their body so that they can actually concentrate and focus more. And here these guys are listening. This is about springtime or summertime, and we're sitting there in a circle, and then we're going to work up with our bodies and how we can sort of remove the stress out of our bodies. Okay, the next slide, please. This is 2013. The same year, the same time I visited Kupwara. This is the border of Pakistan, Kashmir, and we are here on this side, and we are sort of working with the government, with a particular school here, which has been really affected. The children here have been really affected by the conflict because of the bombardments, because of militancy, and so on and so forth. So we are looking at a very, very traditional, conservative, but we try to still get them to use their body a little bit. So I'm using the drum to create sound so that they can expel their fight and fear and freeze. And this is the work which is happening here at this particular edge of the country. The next slide, please. This is an orphanage I've been visiting, been for a long time, for 7 years. And this is there are these children who have been affected by conflict. Their parents, their fathers were sort of, they had sort of lost their fathers in militancy. And this is, they're killed in combat. And I'm working here with the arts, trying to figure an entry point to their minds, because they're highly vulnerable, and they can very much sort of go back into violence. With this particular early interventions was important in my mind. And this is a pro bono work which I did for many years. And I kept coming for many years. This is 2013. Could you go to the next slide, please? Just want to elaborate what we did with them. This is the squiggle, which we did as an entry point again into their minds, where they would just sort of randomly draw and then make these shapes and cut out these shapes and create narratives, and where their fears began and how they started looking at them with a lot of fear and saying, oh my God, I'm really scared of these images, which I do. So I think what we could actually look at is that, so the reason why I'm talking so fast, because I'm sort of afraid that I will sort of run out of time because there are lots of slides. So, okay, so cool, we have time. So that's why I'm going really fast, because my sort of the inner clock starts running. So anyway, this is the entry point here. We could go to the next slide. I could talk more about it. So we are looking at flight, fight, and freeze. And this is where the seeds of violence in these young minds have been there. There's a trauma response where you're looking at fight and flight, and you can see how the children in these sort of images and slides have expressed their anger. When they look at these images, they look at their own mind, and they actually see what's happening with their with what's happening in their subconscious, and you can see, I'm very angry here, don't anger me further. When these images come further to them as a mirror, they operate within these three parameters: the observer, the mirror, and the observer, the mirror, and you have the actor, the agency. So when they look at these three, they are the agency looking at their own mirror, and they can observe it. Yes, I am angry. Yes, I have got anger within me, and this is looking at me. The next one, please. These images are slightly blurred, and you have a snake running towards a boy. And here in this particular corner, the snake has sort of cornered the boy, and the boy is frozen. So we looked at these images, and we sort of illustrated how the trauma response essentially was either a fight, flight, or a freeze. The snake is a very interesting symbol which keeps occurring right from my work in Kashmir to Cambodia, where a lot of young boys show the snake as a symbol of fear, which could be, one level could be that it is a phallic symbol and look at a Freudian interpretation, but there could be many things associated with the symbol, which is, it's a multi-contextual level. We look at a symbol in art. So it could be time, it could be poison, it could be their own anger, it could be many things, but it's very interesting to see a recurring symbol which keeps on coming. Yeah, so we have these two images of fight and freeze. The earlier was a fight. Okay, the next one, please. So look at these kind of faces which explained their own truncated bodies, their disembodied selves. And you can see the leg is not here, the face is only covered half. So they looked and they're angry felt. So their own self-perception of themselves were fractured, ugly. And so you could see what fear, anger, trauma, pain, abandonment could do to these images. And when we look at a shift, we have to see how these images actually shift. These images, when they start, their self-image, when they actually shifts, we know that there has been a movement. We know that there has been healing. So these are portraits of the self with its different faces and bodies. Yeah, so let's go. But before that, we just want to say that when the legs are not there and you have this half faces, sort of bodies, hands missing, it's basically that they are not complete. And it is actually one of the signs that trauma exists, because there's this dismemberment which happens within the body, which art sort of reflects. The next one, please. So this as years go by, this is the second visit, 2014, and here I have started moving into more with tactile material. So the tactile material is like a bridge between the child and the adult world. This is what I sort of discovered while working through the tactile material. So they have been cardboard houses here. Why the structure? Because the emotional structure is missing. Their own private spaces are missing. So I got them to build these houses with these stick figures, talking about the narrative of pain and about these warriors, and these guardians. I sort of gave them a simulation. And then they use this as a way to say how, they start telling their own life, their life story through this narrative, through this framework, which was very interesting. Their pain, their possibilities, and whether they were vendetta driven or whether they were forgiveness driven or what happened. So fantasy is like a mirror which often sort of reflects their lives, and children can actually use this as a way to talk about what's going on in the inner world and what also has happened in their outer world. And how is it educative? Because they start looking at life skills and conversations about life skills, choices, decision making, improvisation, spontaneity. And we start using this because, as an addition to what school teaches, we start looking at how the social emotional aspect gets reflected in these narratives which these children bring about. Many of them have lost their parents, many of them also come from poverty, and so how do these houses reflect their inner lives? Yeah, so next one, please. Okay, so we have this one. This is quite intense. This is where we're looking at the forest. This is we use a straw to blow the paint across, and this is a dark forest, which is a lot of possibilities can happen, transformation can happen, and we look at the hero's journey through this dark forest. And as you can see, these marks, a lot of them had a lot of painful past, and this sort of the paper becomes a container, the holder of space for this pain, which is turned into this possibility, which is turned into this art. So here we look at where they can face inner monsters, where they can face their own demons, and they can look at it in a non-verbal way. So they're getting more and more creative, more and more expressive. So you can see the movement from the squiggle to where we are now. Okay, the next one, please. And this is more of that, which is looking at the creative response. So we move from primitive response to the victim response, and then to the creative response, and then we move to this restful response. So as we're keeping on moving, we're moving to this idea of how creativity becomes a leap into the unknown. Creativity becomes a possibility for actually recreating the pain by acknowledging it, and then by expressing it, and then by being reflected by it. And here we're getting more and more graphic. The next one, please. And this is where we move to the role point, where we get the higher self in, and we physicalize our emotion. This is the 2017. The children have grown up, and as I've been constantly going to the same orphanage or the same group of children again and again and again, we are introducing them to different art forms. And particularly I used the children because they were there to get them to reflect on themselves, because they lived on these liminal edges, and they never used to go back home in winters, and I used to come there. So we're doing this clown sort of work. We're using the nose. This boy has to grab the nose from my this false nose, and then wear it, and then sit on a chair. If you go to the next one. This nose is an object of transformation. This is a game called Kissa Kursika, where there's about the status and power and the shifting notions of status and power. And the boy grabs the nose and then grabs the chair, and someone else has to lift him off the chair and grab the nose back again. So it was a fun thing. But what we looked at it is that how everybody sort of moves you from power, and the nature of power is a constant movement. And I think we wanted to look at how power in their lives is also constantly moving, and how status and power are this constant travel, which keeps on happening again and again. And but here, major important thing is that we physicalize emotions through theater. As there we were projecting it out, and here we sort of embody it and we physicalize it, of maybe anger, and everything is sort of fun and humorous, but it gets a chance for them to reflect on what their actions are. Okay, the next one, please. This is where they are doing a collective mural. The same boys then go back into the idea of how we look at the power within, and the power within. So the topic of the theme was given the power within. There is status and power outside, and there is personal power within. And here they're accessing the personal power. But if you look at them drawing and putting the matter, it is just a lot of emotions which are coming on. And if you go to the next slide, please, the murals will say this is very thick matter. And each layer of paint adds on and adds on. It was so heavy that it almost looked like the paper would tear. And for me, it is an important aspect to see that they bring it all out. And if we do a next painting, it would be lighter. And but I have noticed this, that whenever I did mural work in Kashmir in the winters, and especially with the group of the first, after a long time, there were a lot of paint would be used, a lot of matter would be used, and it'd be very thick, it'd be very opaque. It would be not, beauty is not the point here, but much more to do with expression. And it's very interesting what gets erased, what gets kept, and it's very much metaphorical of what is happening in their lives. A lot of things are getting erased. A new phenomena is being added on, a new event is being added on, especially in conflict where the ground is constantly shifting, and the causes and conditions are constantly shifting. And this is 2016-17. This is before the application. So you can see they felt the changes of things shifting and changing, and that's why erasure is a very important aspect in conflict areas. Next one, please. So this is a small little group, a community which had gone there, children who sort of often protest, and this one boy in the right-hand corner, his face had been blown up by a tear gas bomb. And we're looking at paper theater, again, tactile material, and again, looking at stories. Simple piece of paper could be used as stories with sound and with images and with visuals. And this is where we're talking about the idea of compassionate and wisdom response, you know. So we're looking at these various responses, right, from primitive response where trauma comes in, and trauma plays right through, and then it comes to this particular response, which is the compassionate wisdom response, where the dead material, the dead part of themselves, where there's a lot of PTSD, you know, paper as a dead material, it brings about the undead and the unsaid, you know, because as soon as this is a dead material and they start moving it around with sound, a part of them which is dead inside within them starts becoming alive. And you can see the joy later on what they feel. They're very minimalistic, very simple things to do, but they felt very happy doing it, making it with their hands and then playing it out, you know, in a playful manner, where again, I said, you don't have to use dialogues, you don't have to use words, but in a non-verbal way, express what objects they have made. So marriages, funerals, mourning, celebration, all sorts of aspects of life gets played out. And when there is no films or cinema or any entertainment, this kind of work and activity in a closed way, in a conservative, militarized, violent space becomes very important for release. And this release brings joy in, and this joy allows also humor, allows a certain kind of illumination to happen, a certain kind of insight, a window of insight which takes place, then rather than just being the victim where things are happening to you. Okay, the next one, please. This is Manipur, which is very interesting. This is again near the borders of Burma. So you can see what has moved from Kashmir to the borders of, Pakistan to borders of Burma. This is Churachandpur. This is not very far from the border. It's not exactly on the border, but I'm working with a peace education organization, and we looked at how these children, class 7th to 8th, we looked at the idea of ghosts and as a metaphor for hauntings, as a metaphor for trauma, as a metaphor for, you know, what is the fear and what is buried within themselves. And Manipur has a history of from World War II to the recent conflict times. There has been inter-ethnic conflict, not just with the army, but within themselves. This is the Protestant, the Paite community, which had a conflict with the Kuki community. And I'm working with the Paite community. This is a mono-ethnic group. There are no Kukis here. They don't talk to each other. And we're looking at, their inner world. And here we are accessing very interestingly, as you can see, they will talk about their hauntings a lot. They'll talk about through their pictures, through what are their codes, what are they afraid of. So hell is a very important thing in terms of fear. They're all afraid that they will go to hell. And this is what sort of comes out. What hell looks like in many ways, we can see the next slide. Could we go to the next slide, please? And so this is images of fear, which is images of hell. Hell is suicide, murder, someone coming and stabbing them or them killing themselves. So homicide and suicide are often things which, sort of very much part of their inner landscape, which is very violent, and they hardly spoke, but they all showed all these with very beautiful etched drawings and the horrors of their inner world. And I sort of immediately understood that this is where mental health work is very much required as a part of their education, and these particular schools have to sort of collaborate with mental health, collaborate with, trauma education, arts-based pedagogy. All these things have to go along with the curriculum, to support them, because there are special spaces with special needs. I want to just talk about this boy. He wore the mask himself and he became the haunting. He became that which is haunting him. So it's very interesting how this was an extra thing which he did. And his hand is showing the pen as a dagger, which is also very interesting what happens to trauma, that you want to fight it, but you become part of it. You become the zombie, you become the undead. The next one, please. And this is where we look at safety. After this exercise, I did a safe, because I wanted to give them a container. So the paper becomes a container, the drawing, the color becomes a container. We use these images of what you think is positive, imposed onto the child. So the child feels love, a self-love, a sense of an antidote. So you are constantly moving from the metaphor, the wounding, to the metaphor, the antidote. And as we'll see more work further on, we'll look at how this antidote is very important, because the wounded metaphor constantly comes when you first suddenly work, and it's very honest and authentic, because the children will not lie. They will actually tell you. But this is something which I have imposed and said, let's do this now as an antidote to what the earlier images were. The next one, please. And this is where we see the wounded metaphor here very much strong. This is Kashmir again, and we're looking at the idea of the theme was broken bridges, because when militancy happened in Kashmir, a lot of the bridges were blown by the militants. And what does it mean by the disconnection? How bloody was disconnection? And the children, the young students in the schools did these installation of art out in the field. So we use nature a lot, and we use nature installation to look at this concept of broken bridges and what it meant to them. And so you look at the loss, which is also represent what there's not this outer connection, but also the inner connection. And I said earlier on that symbols in art are multi-contextual, and you can have this many interpretations as possible, and you can revisit the art as much as possible. And that which just makes it very rich and very interesting. The next one, please. And this is where they are expressing their feelings of being a squash state at many levels. They're looking at this idea that they are sort of between Pakistan, India, and China, and they look at this blade marks, the slash marks, which is also about these years and years of long years of militarization. And these images come from 2015 or 16, and so I think it's very important to look at these sort of marks and look at this wound and to see what the militarized state has gone through. Yes, let's go to the next one, please. And you see them handcuffed to history and to geopolitics. Yeah, this is the image. The next one. Yeah, so this is the last slide. I just want to look at what the pedagogy entails. It entails, what it addresses is to look at the culture of silence, where people don't talk at all, especially in these border states, express the unsaid. It looks at creating ritualized spaces for celebration and mourning, allows this sort of celebration and mourning, the two aspects of life, to take place, especially when there's contexts of disappearance and death which has taken place. Allow grieving to happen, to move through psychosocial intervention. That's what the arts help in. It allows the observation and reflection, which is critical consciousness, and especially because there's so many ruptures which has taken place in these conflict areas. And primarily, how do you create, how do you institutionalize the methodology within schools, within government places, within areas of care? How do you create this idea that concepts of care and concepts of creativity are actually one, So creativity and care, how do you sort of merge this together? This is the work in Kashmir. It's written, especially in the educated institutions, because they are looking after the children. So is it possible to institutionalize this kind of methodology by the teachers as an act of care, through arts projects, through getting children to be arts practitioners? Is it possible for them to use the arts practice to address the inner world and therefore relook and rework their traumas? And to see, once the perception changes, once their reality would also change. With this intent is what we sort of do this work in conflict areas. Yeah, but this is the last slide. So let's go to the next slide, please. And with that, I'll say thank you. So the children are going back to school. And that's the slide which is very important. Back to school. What does school mean here? The school means here in conflict areas, particularly, and of course everywhere else, but particularly it is a space for care. A space where they can celebrate their childhood, a space where the teacher is sort of a facilitator and can create non-hierarchical spaces where the arts can be used for them to look at life